Right, good evening, Drayton Valley. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. It's good to see you, some familiar faces, some new faces, and I'm going to have a great conversation again in our little series that we've been putting together here about Alberta's future. We've talked about independence, we've talked about sovereignty, and now we're going to be talking about the next steps. So this election is less than a week away. So on the 28th, people are going to hit the ballots and make a decision. And those of us who are paying attention kind of see where it's going. And there's a lot of hope here in Alberta. You guys are definitely hoping it goes a certain way. But today's conversation is going to be about what happens on April 29th. So after the election, when those results come in, what is it going to look like here in Alberta? We really have two outcomes: Carney, Poilievre. That's it. There's not going to be a third option. But what will that road look like? If it goes Carney, are we ready to go? If it goes Poilievre, are we going to have some more patience? And is he going to do what we need? History says, don't count on it. And if you're looking at the polls, get ready to be disappointed. We know that the polls, can be manipulated a little bit, but if you watch for a long time and you're a political analyst like some of us here, this is going to be a surprise for some people. We really do think you should get prepared for the worst case scenario. Now, it depends how you look at it. Is it really the worst case scenario if Carney gets in? Not if you're thinking about independence in Alberta. And we had a conversation just a few days ago with several people, Theo Fleury, Dr. Wagner. We also had, who were the other two? Catherine Kowalchuk, and Art Slater. Art Hanger. And in that conversation, independence has been around in Alberta for a long time. The Reform Party tried to make the West come in. The West wants in. But now we're at the point where it sounds like the West wants out. Because that West wants in experiment didn't work out for us, did it? So at this stage, what is it that we're really looking at? So tonight we have David Parker, Doug Galavan, and Tim Hoven, who's going to join us to have conversations about what will the 29th look like. We really only have two options, but I think it's going to go one way. So I do want to get Alberta ready, get you a little bit prepared, maybe splash some cold water in your face and a little bit of truth up here, because it's coming, whether you like it or not. So let's get ourselves ready. So our first guest, we're going to have Doug Galavan come up, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to have a good conversation with this panel. Doug, thank you.
That's a nice sounding crowd. So my touch into the political world came from Rally Canada. We were fighting the pipeline fight actually it really started with the royalty review. And I was tasked with getting CEOs to discuss how the royalties were going to work, because when the NDP government was doing that, they only brought in the Suncors of the world and the Shells of the world, and none of our players in this region, the Whitecaps, the Vermilions, they weren't even in the discussion. So I was tasked with my MLA to bring them on board, and we did exactly that to get that. So that was my first kind of step into anything political. And from there, when they canceled the TMX, it all blew up. And so we formed Rally Canada, worked with some of the other groups, and then we worked very hard to basically get that election to make sure the NDP did not take control of the government again. But it took a lot to get the UCP to come on board. Basically, they were cowards. I don't know how else to describe it. They would not speak up for the Bighorn, which was, again, anybody that's in this region knows all about the Bighorn fight. That was the Yellowstone to Yellowhead, or to Yukon, basically sterilizing the eastern slopes. There was never going to be another pipeline put through there. They wanted to shut down all industry in that eastern, that whole east along the foothills. And it took a great deal in that fight to get everybody on board. So we did win that fight. Then we worked very hard to get Jason Kenney into the provincial government. And then we turned around and had to work very hard to get him out. And then we worked very hard to get Danielle in. And for the most part, she's been okay. We still have some reservations there. But tonight, during this discussion of what happens with Alberta and how we start to strive for our independence, I'm going to be kind of bringing a more cautionary tale. And it's not that I'm not full on board with it, but we have to go in with our eyes wide open. And I hear a lot of the discussions where we believe that we're just going to get a referendum, we're going to cast our little vote, and the rest of the world's going to just pat us on the back and let us walk away. We are delusional if we think that's going to happen. Watch what's been happening in the EU. Color revolution after color revolution. And that's whether you're in or out of the EU. So it doesn't matter if you're Romania, Hungary, or Georgia. It doesn't matter if you're in the countries. Look at Le Pen. They're going to try and lock her up. The AFD, the German right-wing political party, they're trying to outlaw them. So this isn't going to just be a little cakewalk. I mean, Fico in Slovakia, they filled his gut full of bullets. Now, he survived, but anybody that thinks this is going to be just an easy, let's just go on, is not going to be reading the tea leaves very well. There's billions and billions of dollars at stake, and a lot of people are going to come to play. And we just have to be aware of that. Again, that's not saying that I'm not on board. But so that's hopefully what I bring to the table tonight will be a little bit about that. And then we can get some independence in this province, because I don't think it's going to make a difference what way the election goes, to tell you the truth. I think it's just a question of speed. So that's where I'm at.
All right, cold water. Go ahead. Yeah. All right, that's exactly what I was expecting here, because this is going to be not taking the Band-Aid off softly. This is going to hurt. I think every road is going to hurt a little bit. I do want to remind everybody that Bathsheba Vandenberg couldn't make it today. She's working on the Detective Helen Gruss appeal. And if you're not familiar with that situation, that's an officer out in Ottawa who was looking into I'm not going to say too much of this because we'll be on YouTube, but looking into the situation where 9 babies passed away after their mothers, took an experiment. And because of that, she was found guilty, and now there's an appeal. So thank you for Bathsheba for trying to make her way out here. We couldn't get her out here. So just wanted to remind everybody about that. And look, I think you're right. I think the road is going to be hard, and people have to pay attention to what's going on in Europe. There's a lot of people that think the referendum will happen, and it will be an easy thing. I don't know if we'll get there. Danielle is talking about a next step panel, and if you've been following a lot of her work, these panels kind of just go nowhere. And will we be able to count on her? Are we going to have to replace her? This is the Alberta way. If the leader is not doing the job, the base will make a change. Ask Kenney. He's not around anymore. Now our next guest is going to be Tim Hoven. Tim was a Reeve, and he was entering politics in 2023 as an independent. But first, I think you were part of the UCP and got disqualified.
It's a long story.
It's a long story, and we got some time here. But he's my kind of guy, because if you're fighting hard enough, you probably will be targeted and disqualified, even if you're doing the right things. And I believe it was social media. Social media. Who knows? We're still trying to figure this one out. But Tim is here to join this conversation, talk about the future of Alberta. And don't worry about the cold water. We're starting to get refreshed here.
Thank you. So I'll just update a little bit about my history. I'll stand in front of the live stream here. My name is Tim Hoven. I'm from a little town called Eckville. Some of you might have heard that name before. In 2017, I was elected to the Municipal Council in Clearwater County, and I was Reeve for 1 year. The most important thing, though, is in 2022, I started getting involved to Take Back Alberta. I challenged Mr. Nixon in his nomination, and like Jason said, was promptly disqualified. If you poke the bear pokes back. And the solution to that is you just need to get a bigger stick. So that is what I think is in Alberta's future right now. We need to get a bigger stick, because all the work that thousands of people have done to make freedom more important in this province, it feels like it's kind of stalled. So over these next few months, starting on the 29th after the election, I think there's going to be a really big movement of people who are dissatisfied, and they're going to be afraid for their children's and grandchildren's future. I don't know if you heard this. There was a report that someone from the Privy Council's office leaked yesterday, and it said that by 2040, Canada is going to be a complete economic mess. The only way to make money effectively and improve your life is when your parents die and you inherit their wealth, because the institutions that the Liberal Party has created have just sucked all entrepreneurship and all money into this vacuum that we call government. It is the most depressing report you can ever read, and that's not some conspiracy theorist, it's the federal government's report. And that is coming in 15 years, according to that. So if we love our children, if we love our grandchildren, we don't have a choice. We have to act no matter how much it's going to hurt, and no matter what the cost is going to be. This isn't, a fun side project for me. This is, it's the life and death of my family and my family's future. And until we realize the seriousness of the situation we're in, it is never going to improve for us. We have to be all in to make Alberta a better place for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That doesn't bite. He might. All right, well, if you're not awake yet, you're going to be next, because David Parker is here as well. Now, I've had him on my show a couple times, and we've had some great conversations, but some of the work he's done is moving mountains. Things that people say can't be done, he does it, and he seems to be able to have the time to do it and come share some of these experiences with us. Now, if you're not familiar with Take Back Alberta, you should be by now, because they are the ones who are moving these mountains. When he was on a show, I had lots of conversations about what did he accomplish and is he satisfied? And I believe, if I recall correctly, he was pleased with Danielle Smith and putting her in there. But times do change. People show themselves, especially when things are tough. When real decisions need to be made, leadership has to happen. This is when you get to see the quality of that person. There was a lot of optimism. I voted for Danielle. I wanted to see the change that she was supposed to bring. But as we watched some injustices happening, we saw some decisions made, and we saw the sexualization in the schools continue, I was worried. My first indicator was a post for Pride. Basically, her first act as premier was to recognize a group of people who's destroying our future, the children, and actually directly attacking the family. It's in their actual mandate to destroy the nuclear family. Without family, we have no future. So why in the world is she helping them? So I'm concerned about some of the moves. Sometimes I'm optimistic, sometimes I'm pessimistic. I know that when I put out a post and I said, hey, Danielle, we got your back on something, I didn't even say what the something was. Quite literally, everybody called me. Every group, APP, he called me. What are you doing? What's up? My good friend Catherine Kowalczyk called me. Nadine Wellwood called me. Cameron Davies called me. They all called me. What are you doing? What's up? I can't tell them, but I have some optimism that maybe she'll do the right thing, but it's fleeting. I definitely want her to, but as an analyst, I'm paying attention, and I'm watching and listening and talking to her, and I'm not happy with what I'm hearing. She does believe this election is going to change things around here, but I also think she believes Pierre is going to win. And if she thinks that, maybe we have to have another conversation on the 29th. So I'm with Tim on this. Something's coming on the 29th, so pay attention to that. But here we are with David. Parker, who is driven out here to have a conversation with us, and he's going to bucket of cold water in our face. I have a feeling it's coming. David, thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Jason, and it's great to be up here with two fine gentlemen and to have a great discussion. I'm kind of new myself to this separatist movement. I was quite the nationalist for most of my life. I lived in Ottawa for 9 years of my life, worked on Parliament Hill for Stephen Harper and a number of other politicians, Ed Fast, Shelley Glover. And I really believed in Canada. In fact, I loved Canada. My ancestors settled Ontario. One of my ancestors was the first white man born this side of the Grand River. And my parents moved out to Alberta, and I was born here. And I've always thought of myself Alberta first, but Canadian always. That was kind of how I thought of myself. But I don't recognize Canada anymore. I think it's nothing like it once was. I think the nation that we once loved is gone. I think a lot of people loved Canada. Now, there's people who've been separatists all their life, and they like to remind me of how I was wrong all these years. But I think a lot of people feel that way, and I think a lot of Albertans feel that way. And in fact, I think right now, most Albertans that are going to be joining this movement over the next 18 months still have a last hope for Canada. And I think that hope is Pierre Poilievre. They think that he still has a chance to win. They think that he can turn things around. And so we're seeing in the polls that only 30% of Albertans support separation. But I think that's because 20, 30 probably still have hope in Canada. And so I'm here to probably dash those hopes, hopefully, because they've been dashed in me, and talk about the case for separation, why I think it's the path forward. I'll also talk about why we shouldn't rely on Danielle Smith to make that path for us. And in fact, I don't think we should ever be relying on politicians. I think that's the big problem that we face as a society right now, is we're looking to these politicians to save us, to make things better, to change things. And that's a delusion. If we rely on politicians, we're always going to be disappointed. Take it from someone who's relied on too many politicians and been too disappointed too many times. So yeah, I'm just excited for this conversation. I'm glad Jason invited me, and let's get her started, I guess.
All right. Well, are you awake now? How many faces are wet? Are you guys a little bit worried? Yeah? What part is making you worried right now? A Liberal win? Alberta's future might be tough? Separation may hurt? All of the above? Okay. Then we set the mood properly. There we go. I think that's what we need to do here. Because we've had some good conversations, and just like Doug said at the beginning, it sounded easy. We'll just get a referendum. If you listen to Jeffrey Rath, who was on the stage about a week and a half ago, he basically made it sound like we're ready to go. Just have to, vote yes and we're done. But there's a lot more to it. The Clarity Act is far from clear. What it actually means and how it's going to work hasn't been tested. And will Canada actually let us leave? Even if we have a clear question and a clear result, will they let us leave? Or are we going to have to find another way? And if you paid attention to what Jeffrey Rath was doing, by the way, your wife made him a star. But yeah, so if you listen to Jeffrey Rath, he's basically doing a plan B. He doesn't think it's going to be that easy. He's actually going down to talk to Trump's team, not to be the 51st state. It's because Canada probably will make this difficult. And he wants to get the American support for independence. So if we do vote, but we don't get support in Ottawa, he's hoping that the U.S. will be there for us. Now, whether or not they're going to be and what that sounds like or looks like is yet to be determined. But he also understands it's not going to be super easy. So let's go ahead and start with the first question here, which is a tough one for this panel. But can Canada be fixed? Is there a way to fix it before it gets worse? Doug?
When we all kind of lived through the COVID nightmare and the tyranny, and I think we all got a chance to see how weak and pathetic our Charter of Rights are, our Bill of Rights. And then we had Alberta try and do their own. So I think that's a good place to start. Because if we have bad agreements to start, nothing but poison will come from that, from the poison well. So can it be saved? Not without a dramatic change such as Alberta leaving. Alberta leaving could actually fix Canada, as if Quebec had a left.
Like a puppy that gets fixed?
Sort of, because it would force the Constitution to be ripped open. If they wanted Alberta to come back, because right now, who in their right mind as an Albertan would sign up for this? Like if we were just independent now, and you were being courted, would you sign up to this? Not even close. So why would we stay? So if they want us to stay, and they will because they can't afford it without us, then they're going to have to rip that Band-Aid off. That's the only path I see. Otherwise, this country's doomed.
Bruce Party was on my show, and he echoed a lot of what you had to say there. He said if Alberta leaves, or at least says they're going to leave, and has a yes on the referendum, then the negotiation starts, according to the Clarity Act. And maybe other provinces will also do a referendum. We've already heard that Mo says if Carney wins, Saskatchewan's going to do a referendum, like immediately. They might beat us to the punch on that one. And there's a couple other provinces, hopefully northern BC is looking at it, but there's a couple other provinces that might actually be considering this also, especially in a Carney win. So Bruce Party thought, well, that would be the first domino, but that could repair Canada because it forces everybody to the table. And like a bad marriage, when the divorce team shows up and the attorneys are there, people take it more seriously and maybe want to try and fix it. But I think what you've identified there is a constitutional convention, which would reopen that. I don't know if we can get there. I don't know. Tim?
That's the only way it could be fixed. A constitutional convention with 10 equal partners, 10 provinces, and I cannot see any circumstance where Ontario and Quebec would say yes to that. Right now, they have all the power, they have all the authority, they get all the money, or I shouldn't say all the money, a large proportion of the money. Why would they want to change? And until you have those 10 partners demanding change, it's not going to happen. Personally, that's the best option, I believe, fixing the country. But the odds of that happening, I can't see it. I can't see a way possible, unfortunately.
And who would do it? Carney? Yeah?
It would have to be the 10 provinces coming together and say we need to change to fix things. Because the federal government doesn't want it to change. The East, Ontario and Quebec, they don't want it to change. I remember one time I flew into Montreal when I was Reeve for a conference, and I got out of the airport, and it was $1 billion project fixing up Montreal's highway from the airport downtown. And my first thought was, so this is where Alberta's money ends up. They're not going to want to give it up. So it's time for us to be a little bit more intolerant and a little bit harder to say it has to be fixed, and it will be fixed one way or the other.
And you guys are all roses and butterflies. We can fix it. We just have to pretend to leave, and then things will get better. I have, I think, much worse news for the audience. Canada is going down hard, and if we don't get off this ship, we're going down with them, and there's nothing that a constitutional convention would fix. To put it in perspective, 24% of Canadians are currently over the age of 65. And within 5 years, OAS will be $20 billion more a year on the federal budget. Barely accounted for in any of the platforms of the parties currently running. AI is about to slam a lot of the Canadian economy, particularly the Quebec and Ontario economies, which are largely service-based except for manufacturing in southwestern Ontario. We are in for an absolute economic shock in this country, particularly considering the actions of our neighbors to the south, who are trying to onshore their own manufacturing to protect themselves from the oncoming economic storm. If Alberta stays attached to the dead weight that is Canada, we will be dragged down into poverty with them. It's already happening right now, and no changing of our political relationship is going to fix that problem. Not to mention the fact that we are now probably one of the only populous provinces in the country with even remotely affordable housing. The average housing cost in Canada, across Canada, is $680,000, and the average household income is $72,000, which means the average family, not individual, family in this country does not qualify for a mortgage. That's right now. Just wait until inflation really starts to hit after Carney prints another $130 billion in deficits for his vanity projects. There is no way that Canada can be saved. We have brought in so many immigrants, and we have diluted our values to such a high degree that we don't even know what the nation of Canada is anymore. Go to Brampton, go to Surrey, go to Edmonton and Calgary right now. You will not recognize the place that you are in. We're not bringing in the world's best and brightest, folks. We did. Under Stephen Harper, I worked in his government. We had very high standards for bringing people in, and we were bringing in great immigrants who were contributing to our economy. We are now bringing in people who cost the Canadian taxpayer an average of $3,500 a month, which is more than our elderly get from OAS and CPP combined on average. We are right now a hotel for the world's welfare cases. Our productivity has not gone up in the last decade. That means we've brought in 4 million people and see no increase in productivity. But it gets worse. We haven't seen any GDP growth. I think it's over the last 10 years, 0.97. When you account for things like inflation and immigration, we have seen a decrease in our quality of life over the last decade, and it's only going to get worse. So do I think Canada can be saved? Absolutely not. Not only do I not think that it can be saved, I think that if we try to save it, it will be just like, those horrible, tragic stories where someone swims out to help their drowning friend and they both die together. It's time to leave. And if we don't get out now, then I suggest getting out, because you're not going to want to live in the place that this is going to become.
All right. I told you you're going to get truth tonight, and we definitely want to hear this, because I'm not an ostrich, and I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. And I really do care about my neighbors. I do want to see Parkland and Alberta prosper, but I've been watching the same, indicators, key performance indicators across Canada, like GDP, immigration, our inflation. These are important numbers. And we do have to look a bit to our leaders. We don't have to look very far, maybe just into Edmonton. Danielle was supposed to fix things for us, help us, get towards freedom. This Bill of Rights was supposed to be our saving grace, to make sure that going forward we do not have to take a backs and we don't have these kind of problems again. But if you were at the AGM, there was a bait and switch that happened. As soon as you walked in, someone tried to put a yes button on you. There was nobody that gave you the choice for no. There was no no button. It was a yes, and it was put on you. And if you didn't have that button on, boy, did people come around and start talking to you. And boy, it felt like, fringe minority again. Because I was standing there going, wait a minute, folks, we have issues. Let's not idolize the person. Let's actually talk about the issues. My biggest issue on that particular one was the Bill of Rights. There was a group called the Black Hats who put out their version of what they wanted to see a Bill of Rights look like. Lathan Gray and others were part of that. And we liked what they were drafting. But just 2-3 days before, what went to the floor in Edmonton was a different one. It was called Bill 24. And if you read it, it was nothing like the Bill of Rights we thought we were going to get. But here was the bait and switch at that AGM. They printed in the material there, the Black Hat version. And they said, hey, look, at noon on the last day, we're going to debate the Bill of Rights. But they never printed Bill 24, which is the one that's actually going through Edmonton. And they were fast tracking it too. It was like, wait a minute. People, wake up. I even had good people come up to me. Chris Scott was one of them. And he goes, you have to vote yes. We really need this Bill of Rights. I said, but Chris, I just spoke to Leighton like 2 days ago because he's not coming. Leighton was going to come to the AGM, but he's like, I'm boycotting it because they're lying to you guys. So I stood there while they did the Bill of Rights debate, and people were like, yes, we got to get this. We're going to have the rights to bear arm. We're going to make sure that we don't have to put this vax on us. We're going to have all these rights. But it wasn't the one that was actually drafted in Edmonton. And I took some heat that day because I was trying to tell people, hello, the sky's falling. They're like, Jason, shut up. 91.5%, I think, is what the yes was for Danielle. That means 8.5% of people actually knew what was going on. Because if you knew what was going on, you needed to vote no. Because we needed some sort of change here. But 91.5%. So David, I'm going to come to you next. You helped put her there.
Well,
I'm not going to blame you totally. I think there's a few more people behind you. But getting rid of Kenney was supposed to open the door, and Danielle was supposed to have her second chance and really show us who she could be as a leader. Now, what are your thoughts? Because I know that you and I sat down and you're like, hey, she's great. Let's work with her. Let's try and make this happen. But you don't seem like you feel that way anymore.
You know, it's always hard to admit you're wrong, and it was very hard for me to admit that I was wrong. And it actually took me, she came to my wedding. I really believed her when she told me that. She told me a lot. We had many hours long conversations over the first half of 2022 before she started running for leader. To be fair, I was running Take Back Alberta, and I didn't have much involvement with her leadership campaign. But obviously, I supported her myself, and half of the TBA team or more went and worked on her campaign. So she had a lot of support from Take Back Alberta. She was my friend. I really believed in her. She made a lot of promises to me about what she wanted to do, where she wanted to take things as a province, more autonomy. There was a lot of promises about Alberta pension plan. There were a lot of promises about an Alberta police force. There was the only things I ever asked her to do, I will say she did do, which is I said I wanted there to be no more tabulators in our voting. I wanted us to have paper ballots, and she did move through on that, so I'll give her a lot of kudos for that. I think she's helped save the integrity of our voting system here in this province. But the truth of the matter is, and some of this has come to light, more of it's going to come to light, is that there is a deep, dark, festering pit of corruption in Edmonton that is taking our taxpayers' dollars and putting it into the pockets of politicians' friends. Well, I mean the Alberta government, but I think it's probably both. There's an unbelievable amount of corruption going on right now in the use. Well, the AHS story came out, Tylenol that was sold for $14 a bottle that you can get for $3 wholesale a bottle. And that profit was pocketed, and then that money went to a friend of Danielle, someone she's called a friend, named Sam Maresh. There's articles about this. I could go on and on about what's going on with the lobbying firms, Alberta Council, even Wellington Strategies. People are being enriched with our taxpayers' dollars, and that was the line for me. And I brought this up with her right before my famous Polyev tweet. I have the texts in my pocket right here, and she told me not to pick a fight with her. So then I went after Pierre Poilievre and Jenny Byrne, and everyone knows how that ended. She called me an insane person in front of the media, and we haven't spoken since. But I still had hope. I still thought that maybe she would be the leader that Alberta needed, and I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything done on COVID. I haven't seen anything done on our spending. We're now spending more per capita in Alberta than we did under the NDP government. I haven't seen any attempt at fiscal restraint. I've seen a lot of words about sovereignty. I've seen her go on a lot of trips and meet with a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I haven't seen any sort of movement that she could easily take to establishing more sovereignty in Alberta. The Alberta Pension Plan being one of the easiest. We should be in control of our own retirement savings. Quebec is. This is not some absurd thing that we're asking for. Another province in the country already has it. It doesn't take a vote in the legislature. It doesn't take a vote in Parliament. It can just be done by the Premier. She can just request it. And she's decided not to. Now, I believe that was to protect Pierre Poilievre, because if suddenly the Canadian Pension Plan was going bankrupt, that would make a lot of pensioners outside of Alberta quite unhappy. Here's the truth, though. The Canadian Pension Plan will go bankrupt because there's not enough money in it for my generation, probably even Tim's generation. It's unfunded liabilities at this point, basically. So we need to get our hands on that money, because Albertans pay significantly more into CPP than we receive back, our pensioners receive back, and that's not being done. So I'm disappointed. For me, the biggest disappointment is the corruption, because that's something that I've been fighting with the Wild Rose and under the leadership of Stephen Harper and things like that all of my life. And I'd hoped that she was not that way. She was the Wild Rose leader. She was the one calling out the corruption. But it's very deep. I think you're going to see a lot more stories coming out soon. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what Albertans decide. But regardless, she's not going to do anything about separation. She's not a separatist. She's going to try to put a Band-Aid on it. She's going to try to renegotiate with Canada. She's going to tie us to this sinking ship. And if we want to see an independent Alberta, the people are going to have to do it. I truly believe that. Well, Tim.
So Tim, Nadine Wellwood, I was speaking to her a couple weeks ago, and she actually brought up the Canadian Pension Plan and how, you're absolutely right, she could have just signed a piece of paper and it would have been here. But she actually put a hurdle in. The hurdle is referendum now. So she actually put a step in before it actually can happen now, for her and any other government. She's pushing back on what Alberta wants. Now, corruption is another thing that Nadine Wellwood brought up. She won the nomination for the UCP, but she was disqualified. They removed her. And even though she had the support, she had the donors, she had a very large base there that was going to get behind her, the executives of the UCP pulled her nomination. Mm-hmm. Sounds familiar to you?
I think I've heard a version of the story before. So I challenged Mr. Nixon in February of 22 in his nomination. We had a lot of momentum. We sold, it's been 3 years, I've forgotten. I think we sold about 700 memberships in about 15 days. We were at Take Back Alberta events. People were demanding change, and then I was disqualified by the provincial board. One of the things was, of course, the white nationalist insult that Kenney always used with everyone, I think. They use it with Nadine. And I think Danielle, the first thing that she did wrong was she had promised everyone that she would reopen these nominations that the party executive had interfered in. And the people I know in my constituency, we organized, we got enough people coming out to the AGM. We overwhelmingly took control of the board, and they sent a request to the provincial party, to the provincial board, to say, hey, Danielle promised this, let's do it. And then the provincial board at that time said, no, we're not going to touch it. And I think that was Danielle's first broken promise. And it is very sad. I had high hopes for what she was going to do in the province. And like Mr. Parker, I haven't seen it. I've seen a lot of talk, not a lot of action. The other issue we deal with the provincial party is that most of the elected UCP MLAs are not pro-Alberta like we need them to be. They are federalists. They all wanted to get the CPC elected. I know someone asked Mr. Nixon at one of his CA meetings, do you support the Alberta pension plan? He said, no, as soon as Pierre gets in, he'll fix it. And now we're stuck with Pierre not getting in, and we still don't have the APP. So we need to have pro-Alberta people elected into the UCP MLAs in 2027. So we need good pro-Alberta people elected in the upcoming municipal elections, because no matter what happens as we roll forward with independence, the municipalities are going to have a say. And if there was a vote that said 50% of the people wanted to go and all the municipalities said, no, we don't want to go, that's pressure to not go. But if all the municipalities, if your local town in Brazeau County had a motion that said, we want Alberta to be independent, or we want Alberta to be an independent nation, that puts more and more pressure on the provincial government to actually act on it.
Excellent. Doug? Rally, Doug.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I had
Valley.
the whole backside of this sheet was about corruption.
All right. Well, what about municipal corruption?
Well, the problem, and I've been saying this now for probably 2 years straight to anybody that'll listen. Canada is now corrupt to the core. And my big warning to everybody is Ukraine was corrupt to the core. Ukraine was energy, food, and sandwiched between superpowers. Where do you think we are? And what do you think we are? So my warning is very real, and it's very possible. All we have to do is have just a little bit more heat between China and the USA, and their continuity of government says it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or anybody else. They're going to continue on that path. And we've got Russia on our northern border. And Russia's not my enemy. For some reason, Ottawa seems to think it is. But poke the bear, and the bear will eat you. And that's what's happening to Ukraine. And the U.S. can't do diddly about it. And that's what Trump's finding out now the hard way. He sends his fools over there. Lavrov sends them back with their tail between their legs and says, no, we're doing it our way. And this is going to carry on. And so this corruption that you're talking about is systemic, and it's throughout the entire government. Our military's corrupt. Our courts are corrupt. Our medical associations are corrupt. All levels of government are corrupt, as you guys are hearing and saying. We are in serious danger. And I don't know how we tell the Canadians that they can actually believe this, because recency bias says we're all fine. And the other thing that there's an old saying that's, if you can make people believe in absurdities, you can make them do atrocities. And Canada's living this. It's absurd. I'm telling you, it's absurd that a tiny 3% change in CO2, a trace gas, controls the temperature. It's absurd. Scientifically, logically, and in every sense of the word. The atrocity is the Western world is committing suicide. And while they're doing this, they're telling the third world countries to literally starve without having access to cheap, affordable energy. And our government believes this stuff, or at least they use it to steal from you. It's absurd to think that a man can become a woman. It's absurd on its face. And yet,
doctors are willing to commit atrocities to children. It's absurd to think that an unborn child doesn't have some rights and a right to life. I'm not religious, but it's absurd. And it's absurd not to have the discussion. And yet this is our country. And so I could go on because there's many absurdities that are taken as core values now. And atrocities will follow. It was absurd to think that Ukraine could take on Russia. The atrocity is millions are now dead, and they're lying to you. It's 10-1, Ukrainians over Russians, and Russians are dying too, don't get me wrong. I have no hatred for any of these people. They're dying needlessly for another corrupt government, which is our U.S. neighbor. This is a proxy war. They started it.
What I also find absurd is trying to have a trade war with the U.S. Elbows up, right?
It's absurd.
Absurd.
It's absurd that you could win such a thing.
Well, the next question is to you there, Doug. What are we doing? Is this another type of suicide? A
Yes.
trade suicide?
Yes. It goes to Parker's point, that David's point, that it's a sinking ship. But we're in a fleet of sinking ships. The UK is in deep, deep trouble. Our call it our mothership. It's her system that we're governed under, and she's sinking fast. Germany's literally destroying their entire nation over their energy and their fight with Russia. They've lost their minds. France, terrible shape. Europe in general. The EU will not survive this. NATO will not survive this. They don't even know how to lose. They're actually still flirting with the idea of sending troops into Ukraine. All of them. They will die they will be hunted. And why do I know that? Because that's what I'd do. Just put yourself in Russia's shoes. Just reverse the thing. Let's say this was happening in Mexico. And it was China that was having a proxy war with the U.S. in Mexico. They would have nuked it by now. Russia's the only grown-up one in the group. And the reason is because they don't really want to fight with Europe. They really do want to trade with Europe. It's just bizarre to watch. But again, this is the absurdities that come from believing, or the atrocities that come from believing absurdities. And you're right. We are completely, it's absurd to think that we could win a trade war with our biggest trading partner that's 10 times our size, and it's probably much more than 10 times its size because they have the reserve currency. We have toilet paper. So how does Alberta separate in this world and maintain independence and thrive in that world? I don't know yet. I haven't kind of thought that one through enough because it's a little rough. It's going to be a rough ride if all your friends are committing suicide.
Tim, what's Trump's plan here? Is he trying to warn us? Does he want us to fix things up? Or is he, possibly going to try and take over?
I listened to this podcast and it talked about how Trump is good at making the big deal. When it comes to the actual management of things, not so good. And he just hires people for that. I think he looks at his legacy for what he wants to be written about him in the history books. The first term, he really didn't do much because he had the wrong people surrounding him. I think he wants to have Fortress North America created by Donald Trump. Protects America, from China. We have all the resources we would need here. We have all the farmland. We have all the oil we could ever use. I think that's part of his plan. I don't think it's going to be as easy as he thinks it's going to be. And that's why Carney is with the elbows up right now, trying to motivate Canadians to, I was just about going to say act like Ukrainians, but that would be bad. With something you had said, you don't understand why it's going this way. I read this book. It was all about, I think it was called The Profit-Making Machine, and it's all about how you have to look at your company not as something that produces widgets. It's something that produces money. That's the purpose of your company. I looked at it and applied it to my farm to make my farm more profitable. Then I got involved in municipal politics, and I thought, what is, if my farm is a money-making machine, or hopefully is a money-making machine, what is a local municipality? What is that producing? And I've talked to many people, and no one's ever given me a good answer for it. But the output is equal to the results, right? If your business is losing money, your machine's purpose is to lose money. And when we have governments doing these insane things that from our perspective we can't understand, I know there's someone up at a higher level who's manipulating the system, and it's exactly the results they want. Because if it wasn't, they'd change it. So I look at all the stuff that Carney's proposing. He's got a master plan behind it, because he's not stupid. I disagree with him about his plan, but somewhere, someone's going to be making a lot of money off of his plan. And, to say the EU and NATO are going to dissolve, what's going on over there is exactly what the leaders of the EU and NATO want right now. It's sad. I'm a farmer, I've got cattle, and my kids always joke that I've got more pictures on my phone of my cows than of my kids. And, on one level, I love my cattle. They've fed my family for 115 years on our farm. But our government does not love us the way I love my cattle. They don't even think of us. We're not even cogs in the machine. We're completely replaceable. And I think we as free individuals need to fight for a government that doesn't look at us that way. We should be free citizens, and we're not going to get that in a united Canada. I don't know if that answered your question, Jason.
It certainly opened my eyes, and I got a couple more for you in a bit there, Tim. Okay, so David, Jeffrey's headed down to Washington. He's going to go talk to Trump's team. He's looking for that backup of support if we do go independent, and we may need some support on that, because Canada may recognize other countries when they want to go independent. But I don't know if the country of Alberta will be on their list that they're going to want to recognize. So do you think he's on the right path to try to start those conversations with America? And do you think we're going to get any support? I'm not sure what that support would look like. Maybe just a declaration that, hey, we recognize you, or something else. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think though it's always good to have conversations with the world's biggest superpower when you're trying to make a move, and if they happen to want to have a conversation with you, all the better, right? So I have an interesting perspective on separation. I do not think it will happen if we don't get it in the next 3 years, because I think the only way we do get it is if Trump is in the White House. Because I think we need the support of the United States in order to even have a chance of Canada letting us go. Look at Catalonia and Spain. If you don't know about that, look it up. They had a referendum for separation. It was a massive majority. I think it was over 80% voted for separation, and Spain just said no. And now there were, irregularities around the ballots, and there's all kinds of narrative that's been built around what actually happened there. But I think if you look at international politics, this is an opportunity we may never get again, because Trump's talking about wanting Canada to become the 51st state, which, a lot of Canadians find insulting. I don't think he actually does want that, but if a province was to vote to leave, I think he would see that as an opportunity to recognize that. So I think Jeff's on the right path there in a sense, but the truth of the matter is the only way that separation is ever going to happen is if enough people are willing to do what it takes to make it happen. And I worry, frankly, that the real problem isn't our politicians, it isn't our leaders, it isn't our corporations. It's that our people have become so fat and lazy and cowardly and pathetic that they don't have what it takes to do it. I think that we spend a lot of time talking about our politicians. We spend a lot of time blaming leaders. We like to complain. And my message from Take Back Alberta is you want to know why your society looks the way that it does? It's you. The truth of the matter is that we've neglected our politics so much that it's been able to become corrupt to the level that it has. People aren't willing to make sacrifices anymore. I can barely get people to come to a Thursday night meeting to talk about school boards, which is the future of our children, because they're too busy. Well, if the other side gets to keep indoctrinating our children, good luck getting anything done when you want to. Like, we have maybe one more shot at this before we're automatons. But going back to the plan, going back to like what's actually happening here, what you're saying, somebody wants it to happen this way because the machines have been created. They do. We're leaving the time of democracy behind, folks. That's the plan. The plan is feudalism, and you already basically live in it. Like, the experts rule you. The different agencies, they have feudal fiefdoms where they receive money from the government, and they decide who that money goes to. If you're a doctor, you live under a feudal system of the College of Physicians, and if you go against your feudal lords, you lose your ability to make money. And that is a lot of different people in this province, let alone North America. That's the direction. And the rallying cry, the battle cry, whatever you want to call it, of Take Back Alberta is, if you don't do something now, it's over. I think when we look at America, and I am a big Donald Trump fan personally, and a lot of people hate me for saying that, but I like to see a man who will fight for what he believes in, and he believes that America can be made great again. And he might be delusional. It might be over for America in the sense that he thinks of it, but he's going to fight for it anyway. He's going to get shot in the ear, and he's going to stand up, and he's going to put his fist in the air, and he's going to say, fight, fight, fight. And I think that's the problem, is the number of times I hear people say, well, can it even be fixed? It's all broken. Sitting down with a guy today talking about the corruption that's going on in the Alberta government, and he said, well, that's just how it is. That's just that wasn't how it was in the Alberta that I grew up in. The Alberta I grew up in is if you built a sky palace and took too many plane flights, we kicked you out of office. That was the Alberta that I grew up in. The Alberta that I grew up in got so mad at politicians that we haven't had one serve a full term, besides Rachel Notley, unfortunately, in almost 15 years. That's the Alberta that I believe in, but that Alberta is going away, folks, because there's not enough people involved. Because there's not and here's the one that I love. This is my favorite. Well, I'm not going to support any corrupt politicians, so I'm just not going to show up. Well, I'm sure that really offends them, guys. So they're really sad that you're not showing up. So much harder to do corruption when there's nobody watching. It's pathetic. We live in a pathetic society of people who've given up their rights on their own. Just handed them off. And I don't know if it can be saved, but I'll tell you this, we better fight. We better start showing up. We better get over the idea that we're busy. Because the hour is getting late. And yeah, they're going to come down on you. They're going to disqualify you. They're going to fine you $120,000 for holding town halls where you tell people about your political resume and then say, here's the plan. They are going to try to destroy your life. We don't have any brave men and women anymore. We just have a bunch of scared people hiding in caves, hoping that a leader will come and save them. You know, I've been struck by a particular passage in the Bible. I don't know if any of you have Amazon Prime, but they have this new show called House of David. And of course, you know, my name's David, so a little egotistical and like love that kind of stuff. But I've always loved that story. My mom always said she named me after King David. And I am a religious man. And there's a passage that not a lot of people know, but the prophet Samuel is the leader of Israel. But his sons, they become corrupt. And they start charging people to give them good judgments when they come before him. So people of Israel get mad and they say, Samuel, your sons are not following in your ways. All the other nations around us have kings. We want a king. Samuel gets really mad. He's kind of a little personally offended because he was, you know, their leader. But he goes to God and he says, God, these stupid Israelites, they're asking for a king. And God says to Samuel, he says, give them one. Says they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So they get a king and it doesn't go so well for them. But here's the point of that story. We've given up our personal sovereignty that our ancestors gave us through democracy, and we've begun electing kings and queens. Because really, what is a king? They are the ones that get to make all the decisions, and we obey them. That's how people see our politicians now. How many of us, even on this stage, have said we had hope that Danielle would fix things? Well, that's wanting a king or queen. We should be the ones fixing things. But, and this brings me back to my little corruption story, we're just so mad at the leaders not doing what we kind of hoped they would, because that means we have to work hard. We just check out and we let our system further corrupt. I know that was maybe not quite your question, but I had to rant.
Sometimes I feel like the bubble boy, because I've had 600 interviews and I've talked to people like this. And, there's people awake and they're intelligent and they're aware, they're following politics, they know what's going on, they know what the WEF is, they understand Agenda 21. But as I'm campaigning the last month and a half, I'm knocking on doors, I'm meeting new people, I'm taken aback at just how little people actually care, know, or even want to do a thing about it. All I've heard this entire election is, we love what you're talking about, Jason, but blue has to win because red was bad. That's basically the entire argument. But if you look at blue, blue is red. Blue's doing a lot of the things that red does, maybe a little bit slower, and in some places even faster. My next question to this panel is, do we have conservatism anymore? Does this still exist, even in Alberta? David?
Oh, all right. I get to go again, guys. Well, I think actually the problem is that we don't even really know what conservatism is. I think in Alberta we had a conception that we called conservatism that was actually more of a fiscal liberalism. Conservatism is very different than liberalism, but liberalism, when you talk about freedom and rights, that's what the word liberty or liberal used to mean. Conservative used to mean to conserve something that mattered. Let's call it the family as an institution, or the church, or any of the things that our ancestors created that sustained us for generations that are gone now. Yes, of course, there's still people that go to church, and there's still Christian institutions, and there's still families, but they're not the forefront of society anymore. Instead, we've elevated the individual. We've said that the individual is the most important thing. And by doing that, we've created liberalism, which is selfishness. So is there conservatism in North America anymore? Absolutely not. Conservatism has died. Really, we have tyranny versus liberalism.
It is Team Blue versus Team Red. In the last provincial election, it was Team Blue versus Team Orange. I think the deeper issue, though, is that we, as individuals, don't know what we want for our lives, right? We don't have, or we haven't been able to articulate what our core values and principles are. If you don't know that, you're never going to know what hill that you're going to have to choose to die on. So right now, when you don't know what's truly important that gives your life meaning, you'll follow Team Blue or Team Red if they have a leader with fancy socks, right? Can you believe people actually voted for Trudeau because he had fancy socks? Like that was the depth of political discourse in Canada over the last 9 years. But the most important thing that we have to do if we want to move forward is we have to know and absolutely believe it with every piece of our being what's important for us in our lives and our families. I mentioned that political report that came out that was leaked this week. If you don't know what's important, when things get bad, you're just going to break. But if you know what's important, if you've built your life upon these values, if you have meaning from those values, you will be able to fight. And if you don't have that, why bother? That's the biggest issue we have. It's not, are there any conservatives left? We don't know what we want from our world. So we get our job, we turn on the Netflix, we cash our check, we have a beer and chicken wings, and we think that's what life's about. It's about way more if you choose to make it about more. That's the real fight we're going to face. When things get rough, when things get bad, people are going to have to look inside themselves and say, do I have enough left in me to fight? And I hope for me that answer is yes. I've got 8 kids. I've got 3 grandkids right now, and I really fear for their future. If you read these reports, if you see what's happening in other countries and think, there's no way that could happen here, could it? It's a pretty bleak future for them. Thomas Paine wrote during the American War of Independence, if there be trouble, let it be on me instead of on my children and my grandchildren. And that's the attitude that we have to impart to our fellow Albertans. Things are going to get rough. Let's make it happen now so our children and grandchildren have a hope of a better future. Because if we just turn on Netflix and that's our reason for being, it's not going to end up good for them.
I wanted this fight sooner.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we have to rally Alberta now?
I don't know. The thing about getting people riled up is the timing has to be bang on. There has to be a spark or they just won't show up. For all the reasons what you're talking about. Same reasons why our birth rate's dropping off around the Western world. These core values of family. I'd say religion has always played a big part. I mean, we were a Christian country. So we've lost a lot of those core values. Let's go back to the COVID insanity. How many of our institutions outside of government failed? Our Legion was a joke. They refused to let James Topp in. So what core values was left in that institution? Our banks failed. They froze people's bank accounts on behalf of the government. Carney in particular. He was the one that advised this to Freeland because she's not smart enough to have a thought. So our churches turtled. There was a couple that stood up. Grace Life was one of them. I was there. I was fighting those cops, telling them, trying to embarrass them. And just to watch the light go out of their eyes when you actually confront them. But they did their job. They're paid very well to do their job, and they will do it no matter what happens. Our military failed and committed its own sort of suicide That's why we have no one joining for our military. They decimated it over this. It was just bizarre. My son and I, in that first summer, we actually held the race. I don't know whether anybody remembers that we held. It was a all in, flat out. It was just a parking lot race. We brought a rally group of cars in the middle of all that. And the backlash, I was getting threatened because we were going to be outside having a race around a parking lot and a car show outside. The psych op was unbelievable. And this psych op was run, people don't even actually know this. Do you know that the vaccine program is run by the Department of Defense in the USA? It's not medical at all. That's why they changed the definition of a gene therapy to a vaccine, because their laws state that the vaccine falls under the Department of Defense, not gene therapies. So they had to actually change the definition to be able to do what they did. That's why our military fell right in line and then ran the same psych op on us, as did all the Western countries. Not all countries. That's an interesting thing. There was some that couldn't afford it. And they had the best outcomes. And then Russia jumped off the bandwagon very early. Why didn't everybody in Ukraine die of the vid? They didn't have time to do all that. They were fighting bullets, right? Weren't they all supposed to die because they didn't get any intervention? Right? It's hard to get a vaccine when you're in a trench, or a gene therapy when you're in a trench. Why didn't they all die from that? No, this was a fraud. The whole thing was the flu. Where'd the flu go? We were played. So, I don't know, was that the question? Was there conservatism left? What are we conserving? We have to get back to these values, and we will be dragged there. Weak men create hard times. We're there. We're about to get dragged right back there.
You just read my phone.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries, because I'm trying to, a little bit of optimism here. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I suspect we're at the end of that one right now. We're at the hard times, because we're surrounded by weak men.
Yeah, we haven't actually got the hard times yet.
All right.
As Tim Cameron keeps telling me, it's not bad enough yet. We're still eating. We're still watching the sports ball.
It's on the screen.
See? Next time you're knocking on doors and you ask them about, some of those things, just ask them about some of the stats. They'll tell you everything you need to know. So they do show up
For what they want.
for what they want.
So do you think, so you just said it's not hard enough yet. So what does hard look like then?
Collapse of the dollar, collapse of the economy for real. That's really what the fight's about right now in the States. All this trade war stuff. It's sort of about onshoring manufacturing, but that's not really going to happen. They'll onshore some basic stuff, but they can't onshore clothing manufacturing. You're not going to beat out $2 a day labor in Bangladesh. And who's going to do it? Right? So you're not actually going to onboard all the manufacturing. You couldn't touch China with a 10-foot pole. Like, they make everything now. Everything. I don't think the U.S. could even make a jet without them now. I think they'd be hard-pressed.
Without the rare earth minerals.
Without the whole interconnected manufacturing around the world. But what they are trying to do is to solidify their reserve currency status and let them maintain that position of consuming. That's their job. Their job in the world economy is to consume. China is absolutely dependent on it. So once that starts to break down and people stop believing that, why do you think the BRICS haven't just dumped the dollar? Why would you ever put up with a weaponized dollar? You have to have the dollar. Because without that system, without that consumer, it all starts to break down. And it's not going to make that much difference, I'll tell you right now. You change, you get a different flavor if you put a Democrat in government. Sure, you get different corruption, different whatever. The direction's the same. It's like Canada. There's no reason. They use the same consultants. They're the same. It's McKinley or whatever. They consult for all of these Western governments. They're the ones writing the reports. We spend billions and billions and billions of dollars on these contractors to do the right government. It's the same people.
Just before this show, I asked you the table, did the convoy succeed? And one of the things that came up was, well, it exposed the tyranny. It exposed it. As a farmer, Tim, Bill C-293, the pandemic preparedness bill.
The anti-meat bill.
That was, I think, another thing that exposed their plan. They wanted to control everything, including what you produce and what we consume. Everything. Strings everywhere and fingers pulling it. Now, that bill's not alive right now, but it wouldn't take long for another government to bring that back.
Yeah.
We've seen behind the curtain now. Are you worried as a farmer that you won't be able to do what you need to do and some guys with guns are going to show up and force you?
I love farming, right? I love my cows. It's a strange...
You got the picture as we know it.
Strange habit. The only reason I started getting involved in politics is 2017, as I realized for all the work that I do to have healthy soils, to protect the creeks that flow through my land, it can all be taken away by a simple vote, either at the municipality or at the province or at the federal level. So my family's entire life, for 120 years, we farmed this land, and it can disappear because of evil people in power. And that was a wake-up call for me to say, if you want to stay on your farm, you're risking everything. You're risking your family's future. You have to be involved. So am I afraid? That's why I'm here in Drayton Valley on a Tuesday night. It is Tuesday, right? It is Tuesday. It gets back to those core values that I started to mention. I know what's important to me, and I know where I'm going to put my energy to make it happen. Because I know if I don't, the world might unroll in a way that isn't good for me and my family. And I feel weird, we're taught not to be selfish, right? But we have to start being selfish and say, I love Ontario, but it's time for us now. It's time for me and my family. I love people in Edmonton, but guess what? It's time to focus in on the people here in my local community and have our government make decisions that are going to prosper our local community. We have to stop suctioning the money out of our communities and throwing them into the bureaucracies of Edmonton and Ottawa. And until we stand up and demand that, they're going to keep on doing it. Why? Because they can.
No one's going to stop them.
Yeah. If you're not willing to stand up to fight for you and your family, no one else is going to.
We touched on it a little bit. Faith, King David.
No.
So where does that play in this? Are we going to go back to the churches, or are they going to continue to burn them down? There's already talk about changing the Income Act or something like that in order for churches.
Charity status.
Yeah, to change your status so that churches can't be charities anymore. They're already attacking it on every single level, quite literally, burning them down, removing their financial ability, and attacking it in the House of Commons too, and removing it out of the charter. And you can feel faith is under attack. But it's written, we win. How close are we to that?
Well, nobody knows the day or the hour, right? So always be prepared. Okay, I think this is important, right? You can't beat Goliath without faith. You can't. The American Revolution never would have happened if people didn't believe in something that seemed crazy. Let's take this little room here, right? There's not very many of us standing up against an entire, let's say, federal government and saying we want to be a free nation. Maybe there's a few people, like a bunch more probably watching online, but the truth is we might feel small. We might be like, well, what can one person do? But I can't help but think that if we don't have faith, then we should probably just despair right now. If we don't believe that there's something else going on underneath and over top and through all of this, then there is no hope. There's absolutely no hope from a material point of view. But all of the greatest things that have ever happened in history have been through people who believed that the impossible could be made possible. And I believe that. I'll be honest. I was an alcoholic. I was dead in my sin. I hated my life. I wanted to die. I didn't like myself. And I gave up. I laid it all down. I was raised by a minister and a wonderful mother, two saintly people. They're honestly two of the best people you'll ever meet. And I walked away from the church and I said, God, I don't want you to tell me what to do with my life. I want to do what I want to do with my life. And I did. I did whatever I wanted, and I pursued power, and I thought I was a hot shot, even though I was pretty pathetic. And all through that, every time I got high enough to feel like I was content in myself, God brought me low. And you could see that as just an effect of pride, or you could realize that that was actually his love for me. Because if he'd allowed me to stay high and think that I was good enough, and I never would have been brought so low that I said, you know what, I'm done. I have nothing. And I'll tell you, people say they surrender and things get better. They got worse. I said, I'm done. I got nothing. And then I became suicidal. And I literally moved into my parents' house to die. I thought I was dying. I was convinced of it. But the one thing I did in that moment is I said, I'm not going to drink again. And I stopped drinking. And 6 months later, I was running around this province giving speeches about how we could get rid of Jason Kenney. And here we are today, nearly 4 years later. Without faith, I'm a dead man. I'm lying around in my own vomit. So for me, it's everything. And if God can redeem a proud, arrogant, and now I'm not saying that I don't still have those problems, right? But if he can redeem an alcoholic like me, who was obsessed with power, who all he wanted was to be important, to who I am today, which is a slightly better version of that person who doesn't drink, then I think he can redeem Alberta. And I think that if we don't believe that, I don't think we have any hope. So that's my answer to that.
So if you have any questions, go ahead and get ready for that, because we're going to do one more pass on the panel, and then we'll jump into some of your questions. But it feels like we are the band on the Titanic. We're sitting there letting people know what's going on and just kind of entertaining them because we know we're sinking. And it's women and children and the selfish first, right? Because some of them got on there. They shouldn't have been. But is there enough lifeboats for everybody? Or are we just sitting here entertaining this group here while the rest of Canada watches hockey?
We need to make our own lifeboats. Look, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, only 3% of Russians participated in the revolution. The Iranian Revolution, where the Islamic State was created in Iran, 3% participated in the revolution. The Reformation, which shook Europe and changed the world, tiny percentage of the population. I think people like to think that you got to capture momentum and you got to have a huge crowds and you got to build the protests and that's not how you change a society. You change your society one conversation at a time, one recruit at a time. The man that I follow was walking along the shore of a sea, and he saw a fisherman sitting in a boat catching fish. And he said, "Put down your nets and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And that's all I try to do. Is I go out and I try to collect people and I say, repent. Your apathy has brought us here. And how do you repent? It's not saying you're sorry. It's not feeling bad or guilty. That's not what repentance is. It's not how I got over alcohol. Repentance is saying, I'm not going to go this way anymore. I'm going to change what I'm doing and I'm going to go the other way. So if you have been one of those apathetic people, which most of us have, instead of feeling bad or sorry, you can get up and say, you know what, I'll have one conversation a day till the day I die about what's going on, and then I'm going to find an action. Because here's what we do. We sit around and we talk. I'm a talker, don't get me wrong. But I have a motto that I try to live by, and it's actions, not words. And what are the actions? Well, people say, well, I don't understand politics. I don't know what I can do. Well, then just start. This is why I told people, get on the constituency association boards. It's not because I think the constituency association boards will change the world. It's because if you sit on one of those boards, you'll eventually figure out how the board works, and then maybe you'll go and do something else, and you'll learn. Because how do you learn? By doing. You do it over and over again, and you suck at it. I have lost more campaigns than I've won, but it's made me good at campaigning. My son still is learning how to walk, and he sucks at it. But do I get up every day and I help him do it again? Because he's got to suck at it before he gets better. You're going to be bad at politics when you start. In fact, I would say so many of the people I recruited into TBA are bad at politics right now. They're worshiping a leader. But you know what? They're learning, and they're going to learn, and it's going to hurt, because I used to do that. I know how much it hurts to believe in someone and have them disappoint you. It's happened to me way too many times. Honestly, shame on me for continuing to put my faith in the leader and not say, okay. But here's the thing. We're not on a Titanic, and politics is not the weather. You don't just have to bear it. You can change it. And it doesn't take as many people as you think. We shook this province to its core with 900 people showing up at an annual general meeting in Edmonton. Okay? 900 people. Now, you need more now because more people are showing up. But the truth of the matter is, we don't need lifeboats. We need people engaged.
Tim, they rescheduled the debate for a hockey game. If you go to McDonald's right now, you can get an adult Happy Meal. What? Yep.
Does it come with a toy?
It does.
Is it a Minecraft toy?
Correct.
I'm not going to go get a Happy Meal tonight, by the way.
Well, my question is, do we have a nation of adult children now who are not really paying attention and they would prefer to watch hockey over even a national leaders debate?
I love hockey. I'm very happy that the Oilers almost won last night. But do we have a nation of adult children? We have it gets back to what I said earlier. We have a nation of people, men and women, who don't know what's important to them. and we have been reduced to just being a consumer. Our governments have done things to actively push people out of the political process. If you look at the story of Take Back Alberta, I will say that there were actions coming out of the UCP Premier's office trying to get everyone just to go home so we can go back to the way things were. You'd agree? Oh, yeah. The politicians do not want people involved in politics because people make it difficult. If 200 of you went to the town council chambers when they had a controversial vote, how would that change how those councillors vote? How big is Drayton? 12,000? 10,000?
I think it's 5, 6.
Okay. If 200 people showed up, those politicians would be shaking in their boots. Politicians watch the live stream numbers and see how many people are watching the live stream during certain debates that go on in the council. And if there's 2 people watching, then all of a sudden for a topic, it jumps up to like 10. Holy smokes, there were 10 people on the live stream watching us. It doesn't take a lot of people to get involved to change things, but we are taught subconsciously just to go about our business and just be happy with the world the way it is. There's a story. This family was coming over to North America on the ship. And it's an old steamship, and the dad worked hard so he could have money to get his family to America. And he bought the tickets to get on the ship, and all he had for the journey was a loaf of bread and 1 piece of cheese. So every day he'd ration the bread and ration the cheese. And everyone was starving. They were miserable. And then about a day before they got to New York, the son went roaming around the ship. And he came back, and his face was all dirty with sauce, and he had pancakes in his hair and sausage, and he put cheese and stuff in his pockets. And his mom and dad were worried that he's going to get thrown off the ship for stealing. And the kid said, "Dad, the food came with the ticket." They didn't know. And that's where we are right now. In this country, we could have the democracy that we want. Right? It comes with the ticket. We just have to get out of our seats and take it and make it happen. And stop listening to politicians because they're in it for themselves. And I was a politician. But we have to stand up, we have to know what we believe, and then we have to act on it to make it happen. Nassim Taleb in his book Anti-Fragile talks about how all it takes to change a society is you need 10% of people who are unwilling to compromise in their beliefs. If 10% of the people demanded an end to corruption in the government, that's enough momentum to change it. If there were 10% of the people that wanted no income tax and they were going to fight like that to the bitter end because they were not going to compromise, it would be over. We need to know what we believe, we need to know what we want, and then we need to act on it.
So Doug, last question for you. 2022, January, Hong Kong, everybody went east to kind of stand up, just to stop this, actually to get answers to the question about these mandates and why we have to do them. Not only the government didn't answer that, they pointed guns. And for the last 3 years, people have been going through court, lives ruined. Some are still in prison. We're hoping on the 25th, Chris Carber gets a good decision. But we still have people locked up. And the fallout from that is no leaders are stepping forward. Nobody wants to try and do it again. Fundraising has dried up. And we're all scared now. Bank accounts are froze. Can we do this again? Is there enough courage, not necessarily a convoy, but to stand up, 3%, 10%, whatever the number might be? Do you think we can get there?
When it gets bad enough.
Only if it's bad enough.
Only if it's bad enough. I'm not saying that we, obviously, people have been stepping forward for school boards. You have made an impact, as well as others. So there. the convoy had a decent response in some ways, in that they didn't go further with their tyranny. The tyranny did peak at that point. So it did have utility. And absolutely, it showed the risk. When you asked me to come speak, I said, well, who the heck's going to want to listen to me, right? I'm just another guy, right? But I felt like I needed to bring the warnings, because what you saw was nothing. That was nothing. No one was shot. Yes, we had some people absolutely they used lawfare against them, absolutely. I'm sure you know a little thing or two about it.
I've watched a few of it, yeah.
Right. And I'm saying it can get much, much worse. And so the overarching push that's coming against all Western nations, and an independent Alberta is not going to be immune to these pressures. I split my time between Drayton and Edmonton because my job's there now. Yeah, they're raging communists in parts of Edmonton. So you separate, and you still have Grand Prairie versus Edmonton, and a power structure in Edmonton. So none of these problems really go away, but you do have to be aware of the risks. And I guess that's why I agreed to even sit up here tonight. Is I believe that overarching world dominant government, the WEF, that whole notion, the 1984 living out the book, the Orwell's book, is happening today. It's a flawed. It's a flawed system, and it's doomed to fail. What matters, though, is how much damage is done to the people while it fails. It will fail. For all those reasons that you guys, it will make hard men. Hard men will fix this. But how much pain and suffering has to happen before that occurs? And all I can do is try and warn what's happening in the rest of the world when they are standing up to these things. They don't go quietly into the night. They're well organized, they're well funded, and they do have a goal of their technocracy. They want. How many times have you heard on the news, the experts say? The first thing anybody should say to any reporter that ever says that is, you name that expert. Give me his name and phone number. Because it's all bull. They did this on Chad constantly with the COVID. As soon as someone said anything about the vax harms, they pick up the phone and they find some understudy, yuckamuck, and what's the study say? Well, according to Pfizer, everything's ducky, right? And the expert said, but it's not an expert. They're lying. And we're being gaslit constantly. I don't know if everybody knows what the Overton window is, and that's when you're allowed to discuss certain things. You saw it in the federal debate. It was a joke. You had 4 globalists standing on stage, arguing within a little box about things that didn't matter. They never talked about immigration at all in the English one, yet it's the one thing that's destroying our cultural unity, our healthcare systems being overloaded, our education systems being swamped.
Housing.
Housing is just an absolute basket case.
And crime.
And no unity. No, that very thing that you're looking for, the community, that cohesiveness in community. How are you going to get that when there's purposely. This is in their playbook. And all this has happened before. All this gender bender stuff, it all happened before. It happened in communist Russia. It was happening in Germany before that crap show went to pieces. This is all we're just living history again, and it's just living it in full color right now. So they're doomed to fail. Know what they're going to bring to the table, and then plan for that. That's what I was hoping to bring tonight, was understand your enemy. Understand what they're likely to do. Because I was absolutely unaware of anything. When we were doing that fight, you should have seen the money that was being poured at this poor little Drayton Valley group. We were nothing. We were just 5 people, 6 people. And the money that was coming out of the Rockefellers and the Tides Foundation. And then as soon as you got a handle on who you were fighting, they changed names. And all of a sudden this other group starts, who are they? Oh, you could trace back though. It's the same money. It's our money. It's all stolen money. Global affairs in Canada and the U.S. aid thing. But here's the thing. Trump's trying to clean up some of the spending, but he's really not. He's taking out some of the grift for the people that's not on his particular team. But they're never going to get rid of the main funding. The main funding, that's how they do their color revolutions. That's how they go after the Georgia government. That's how they pay all these protesters. That's how they do this to these governments. That's how they get that's how they help fund other countries to do this stuff. That's how it works. So we're fighting our own money, but they're still doomed to fail in the end.
We touched on it briefly, but the corruption of the court, there's a great example of that. The prosecution uses taxpayer money to prosecute you. You have to come up with your own defense. All right, so on that note, we're going to end there. I want to thank all these gentlemen here. So Doug, Tim, David. We have some questions. We'll be happy to take them. I'm not sure if we have any.
Any questions? Here we go. You can come on
Yeah,
up.
here we go.
You won't be on video, but you'll
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, guys. How's it going? Thanks for coming. That's awesome. I don't have a particular question because I've been getting a lot of questions from this fine fella here all week. But I do have a little thing to add. And it's one thing that we really got to think about deeply. And that is the machine is enrooted you deeply into your subconscious. Like, I don't know if you guys have watched any of that apparent off to the moon or off to the space event that happened with Katy Perry and all those juggernauts. Anyways, if you really watch that very closely, the brainwashing that is occurring in that video or those videos are amazing. Like the flower thing, the little card she flashes with the LGBTQ. Repetition and emotion is what fires your subconscious mind. So I'm hearing a lot lately, people are waking up in the morning, not having any energy, feel drained, they can't get anything done. It's been happening. So if you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to have a great bloody day today, and you keep that in your mind, you're going to have that. But if you come onto the other end of the spectrum, you're not. So you have to make sure you program your subconscious that way and through repetition. Wake up every day feeling like you got something to do and you're going to get it done. Because that's what's going on here. And they're making us dull down. So if we want to make these guys happen, let's start thinking we're going to make it happen. Because that's very important. And do this at night, do this in the morning, when your brain is calm. Just program those things into your brain. And say to yourself, I'm going to wake up today, I'm going to have a great day, and I'm going to have a better day than I had yesterday. Because that's going to make a big difference. And the only way you're going to reprogram your self-conscious is through that repetition. So let's get her done. And then we can be stronger.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, guys.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I do appreciate you being here. I think it was important to have this conversation, and there's going to be more. So on Saturday, we're going to be talking about COVID accountability. This will be in Spruce Grove at the Holiday Inn Express at 2 p.m. This will be with Dr. Makis and Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, Sean Buckley, and Patricia Robertson from the NCI. Because, yeah, we may be not on a sinking ship and we can't really build these life rafts, but at least let's try and find some accountability for some of the harm and try and help some of the people that were hurt, injured, and are no longer with us. Darcy Lewis will be joining us. This is the son of Sheila Lewis, who passed away here in Alberta. And we'll also have Devon Harper, whose brother, Garnett Harper, passed away in Ontario, father of 5, simply because he made his choice. So if you want to hear some more conversation like this, join us in Spruce Grove on Saturday, 2 p.m., and join us online, The Living Show. Thank you for being here.